Hello, everyone. This is just a sort of off the cuff kind of thing. I didn't plan for this or anything, and I saw this article and it ticked me off a little bit for reasons that may or may not be obvious as I go, and based on the title, we'll see. First off, I don't know that I've ever talked that deeply about my opinions on abortion rights and Roe v. Wade and so on, and I'm not going to get into them too deeply here, but for the sake of some clarification, even though I'm, averse to steal an idea from someone else who stated it much more clearly, when quoting the Bard, if someone else has said it better, you might as well. There's a comedy bit from Bill Burr that talks about abortion. And he makes a metaphor out of baking a cake. You may have heard this before. I can't do it justice here. I highly recommend you go listen to it for yourself. But he makes the cake of, he makes the case that he kind of sees both sides of the argument. At the same time, if you put all the ingredients into a bowl to make a cake, and then somebody comes along and wipes the bowl off of the table and smashes it on the floor, and you say, hey, you ruined my cake, and they go, hey, that wasn't really a cake. It kind of was, or was about to be. But that's kind of beside the point. I could get into that another time, but I just want to go over this little thing real quick because this thing still ticks me off. This really ticks me off. Former Supreme Court colleague says she was naive to support Amy Coney Barrett. Okay, and again, as clarification, I don't know a whole lot about Amy Coney Barrett. I know what's been put out in the press, etc. I don't really care about Amy Coney Barrett in the grand scheme of things, or at least for the sake of this stream. But I just want to talk about this idea real quick. A nominee to Connecticut's highest court said Monday that she was naive to have supported U.S. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett and that she wrongly, quote, thought there were guardrails, unquote, that would have kept the Supreme Court, quote, constrained, unquote, by its own precedents. That's an important word. I'm going to come back to that multiple times. Sandra Slack Glover, the appellate chief for the U.S. Attorney of Connecticut, was nominated in April by Governor Ned Lamont, Democrat, as a justice of the state Supreme Court. If confirmed, Glover would succeed Maria Araujo Khan, if I'm saying that correctly, who resigned to become a federal judge in the U.S. Supreme Court for the Second Circuit. Glover, 52, is a graduate of the University of Chicago Law School and a former clerk for two high-profile judges, Judge Richard Posner, legal scholar and judge to the U.S. Court of Appeals of the Seventh Circuit, and Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. During Glover's confirmation hearing on Monday, she was asked about the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Quote, I support a woman's right to choose, full stop, Glover answered. Okay. This is where the rant comes in. And this isn't specifically about necessarily this lady or necessarily about Amy Coney Barrett, but let's just talk for a second about this constant refrain of how somehow Roe v. Wade was ever a law. It was never a law. It was a precedent. It was a guide. It was advice. It was glorified advice on legal questions. That's it. It was only as valid so long as the court in seating decided to maintain its validity. It was always a tenuous piece of advice. Now, what would change that? What would make it not tenuous? Oh, I don't know. How about codifying it into law? Now, who has the power to codify things into law? Oh, that's right, the legislature, the Congress, the House, and the Senate, and ultimately the executive, unless the executive is overturned with a veto-proof decision. Okay, now, how often over the course of the lifetime of Roe to this point have Congress had the opportunity to codify Roe into law? Multiple times. Have they? No. Why not? Well, either a lack of will or a lack of votes. And yet we've had multiple instances where the people that are most supportive of Roe v. Wade, that being the Democratic Party, have had the House and the Senate and the executive. And time after time after time, they either cannot get the votes within their own contingency, or they can't get the votes overall, and they can't pass it. Or won't pass it. But either way, it's been a precedent the entire time. And so now this lady says, I support a woman's right to choose. Well, I have a question for this lady and anybody else who complains about what the Supreme Court did last year. If you got onto the Supreme Court and you had two things in front of you, you had the law and you had precedent, which one do you think you are honor bound to defend as a function of your position in the government, in our society? The law or precedent? Which one do you think carries more weight? And I'm not just talking about Roe, I'm talking in general. If you are there as a Supreme Court justice to uphold the law, which one takes precedence in your mind? The law or precedent? She was naive to support Amy Coney Barrett. What, for doing her job? When she's had two things put in front of her, glorified advice or black letter law. Golly gee whiz, which one should I go for as a Supreme Court justice? Okay? Now, codify Roe into law if you want the Supreme Court to uphold Roe. Otherwise, it's as tenuous as the people in the chairs. That's how it's always been. This is the same situation for DACA. It is not a law. It was a presidential fiat, tangentially and tentatively endorsed by the Supreme Court, which could and should conceivably go away with the president that decides to sit down and say goodbye. But somehow it's still out there. It's still a kind of quasi-law-ish thing. I don't appreciate presidential fiat. I don't necessarily appreciate precedent that leans on and becomes quasi-law. But here we are. Oh, the Supreme Court colleague said she was naive. Oh, well. Well, I'm glad that this lady isn't on the Supreme Court. If she would just bow to emotion and ideology rather than supporting the thing that she would be taking the oath for, and that is the Constitution. Whether you like it or not, you are not there to adjudicate your feelings on it. It's supposed to be the law. And I know I'm not so naive myself as to think that Supreme Court justices don't or can't or won't lean on their own emotions or personal biases when it comes to interpreting the law. I'm being an idealist here. But when it comes down to brass tacks, which is it? If you have two in front of you, the law or an opinion, that's the legislature's job. That's Congress's job. And they haven't done it. Time and time again, they haven't done it. And you know why they haven't done it? Because they don't want to do it. Because if you win the war, there are no more battles to seek funding for. There are no more votes to gain on a subject and an issue that's already been settled. I hate to be so cynical about it, but honestly, whether it comes to the Roe v. Wade or Obamacare or the debt ceiling or whatever, these constantly recurring nightmares of social discourse are there for a reason, because they generate popularity for the side that you want to win. And if they go away, if they're settled, if there's no more debate, if everybody has to move on, then you lose that tool to gain support and fundraising and votes. So they don't want to codify Roe, because if they did, it'd be much harder to try to find a divisive subject to drum up support. But here you have somebody complain, I was naive. Oh my gosh. Anyway, there's my rant. I just read this thing and I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And again, it's not about the individuals on here. It's about the overall. In the overall, I've seen this so many times. I saw a tweet from Joe Biden a couple of months ago, or whoever runs his account, saying, we must codify Roe into law. Well, hell, Joe, you had about a year to do it when you got into office until the midterms. You had the House, you had the Senate, you had the executive. Why didn't you do it then? I mean, personally, okay, I know I might piss off some people by saying this. Personally, if the majority in our democracy decides upon something through the regular course of business and I disagree with it, well, sucks to be me. If they want to codify Roe into law, then do it. If they did it, I don't know what I'd feel about it, but you know, you live, you learn, you move on. At this stage of the game, it's gone back to the states. Whether that's appropriate or not, I don't know. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I'm not a historian. For the sake of things, for the time being, it's how it's going to be, probably at least for another generation or so until the next big change happens. If another change happens, who knows? But as it stands, and as it has stood since its inception, Roe v. Wade was a glorified suggestion. And anybody pretending otherwise is not paying attention to the facts of the matter. And they were just hoping, praying, keeping their fingers crossed that the Supreme Court would always uphold it in perpetuity. Except that's not how precedent works up against written law. And every time I see this, whether it's this or anything, I get really irritated by people trying to pretend that reality isn't reality. If you want the law to change, you have to vote people into office that want to change the law. Okay? You know, if there was a politician or a set of politicians who all came out and said, we are going to run for office, we are only going to take one term, we will not run for re-election, but we will dedicate our entire time in office seeking this one goal. That's it. That is the utility we will offer the public in our service, and that's what we're going to do. And once we've done it, or we haven't, we will step aside and let the next route come in. And that would be fine. I would respect somebody who said something like that, even if whatever they were going after was something I disagreed with. If they said, I am here to do one thing, I'm going to set the footprints in the sands of time for the sake of what I believe in, and then I'm going to walk away. And either win or lose, that's it. That's my utility to my society and my community. Great. Imagine if somebody did that. Can you imagine the integrity of somebody for doing that or declaring that? Hell, even if I disagreed with them on whatever they were going after, I might vote for them just on the principle of that. But holy heck, you got these guys just taking paycheck after paycheck over term after term after term, complaining about the same thing and seemingly never doing anything about it. If you can't get done what you need to get done, step aside and let somebody else have a chance. There is no more acidic title in life, in my mind, than career politician. Jesus. Oh, man. Okay. Derek LaRue, dude. As always, thank you so much for your support and your generosity. I don't know what to say. As always, thank you so much. I hope whatever I'm doing is of worth to you and meets your generosity. I don't have it up there. I forgot. I did this completely off the cuff. I really should have a link up there to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society donation page, which I have donated for the sake of my birthday and your guys' generosity. So thank you guys so much for that. And those of you that did donate yesterday or elsewise, thank you. And Derek, appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. I don't know if I have much more fuel into my fire of rant there. I think I've said everything I had to say. It just, I read this a couple hours ago. I put a tweet up about it for the sake of transparency or completionist or whatever else. My tweet said, precedent is not law. Congress has had many opportunities to codify Roe, but they never have. Leaning on the tentative nature of precedent is and always will be a dice roll. This former colleague should be working to change the law, not dunk on Barrett for upholding it. And this isn't me. Again, I have a complicated, I don't know, opinion, experience, or whatever with the idea of abortion. I'm not going to go into it here. Just know I can see the argument on both sides. And I know you're just a centrist. Nobody's a centrist sitting on the fence. It's not that easy. It's a complicated issue. Where is the line drawn between, the rights of the individual to the rights of the unborn? Where is that timestamp? I don't know. When do the circumstances justify it and when do they not? It is subjective in some places and objective in others, and I don't have an answer to it, and I'm not here to try to answer it now. But I'll tell you what, when it comes down to what is written in law versus what is written in glorified opinion, it's pretty clear to me. And so when I see people that are supposedly in the legal system saying that they would lean on their own feelings against someone whose job it is to interpret and uphold the Constitution, I don't know. It just irritates me. And I've seen this so many times over the last couple of years, and I mean for decades in the past. I just felt I needed to vent. So there's my rant. That's what I have to say about it. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below, or let me know on Twitter. And let's see. Besides that, what else? Since I didn't plan for this, Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, I'll be doing TED Excellence per usual, where I'll look at a off-brand TED Talks. And boy, oh boy, do I have a whole selection to choose from this week. I've already zeroed in on about 9 different options. There's so many interesting titles out there this week. I don't know what I'm going to choose yet, but you'll find out with me on Thursday. And then Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. Sorry, I take that back. I got to correct myself. This Sunday in particular, there is no Sunday stream. Instead, Sunday, May 21st, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, is the 4th episode of Living on Borrowed Crime, with a lawnmower in the background. I don't know if you can hear that, but I apologize for that. Featuring Matt Orchard and Dave's Lemonade, where I'll be talking to them about their careers thus far as true crime content creators. So with that, guys, that's my schedule. That's my rant. Hope you're all having a good, what is it, Tuesday? It's Tuesday. Hope you're all having a good week otherwise. Hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.